And when Israel no, but when Israel goes and says, well, hopefully, because they have a whole.
Yeah, well, Israel has
No,
no, that's true.
they took it.
Yeah.
Like 30. How did you drop that?
But there have been 35 at workshops.
What time is that?
1 o'clock. Tonight is an organization called Im Tirtzu. It's a grassroots Israeli organization that promotes Zionist,
It was very close.
that's at 8 o'clock. And one of their main concerns is the fact is that they try to balance the negative media approach by the left wing.
Turkey about. Okay. Well, they asked Europe to help, so Europe said ask Russia. That they said,
Good morning, Zev. How you doing?
Yeah, they'll help themselves.
Okay.
Well, they'll make a deal, they'll sell them one day.
Amen.
I didn't know you were my son. I suppose surprises.
You never know what you can find out.
No, it's Ben Mordechai.
Okay, I'm going to start with our learning sponsors and wish everybody a happy Tu B'Shvat. Don't forget to hug a tree today.
And realize that the British copy.
Good enough. It's not.
They have boxers.
Not quite.
$3 for the first 1,000 people to write insurance. One is
Okay. Year of learning, Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel Bas Isser, friends of Leonie Meisem and Leah Saber Bas Kanoch Zundel, friends of Melaskotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas. Month of learning by Mendel and David Cheslow in memory of her father, Nehemiah Ben Mordechai Yonah Halevi, Haran and Mel Haller in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bas Yehuda Leib, Yossi Goldstein in memory of his father, Moshe Tzvi Ben Dov, Isaac and Eda Novik in memory of his mother, Miriam Gilel Bas Chanoch Henech, Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister, Golda Leah Bas David Halevi, Tova and Leo Zimmer in memory of her mother, Henya Bas Beryl, her father, Aaron Ben Yosef Mordechai, B. Pizer in memory of her husband, Harav Yisrael Chaim Ben David, Stanley Presser in memory of his mother, Leah Bas Yehuda, his mother-in-law, Golda Bas Leber, his wife, Ruchel Mincha Bas Moshe, Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig, in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Hensha Ita Bat Chaim Yehuda, David and Sharon Carpel, Rabbi Tzvi and Robin Carpel, in memory of David and Tzvi's father, Zeb Moshe Ben Shlomo Yaakov, Carolyn Jar Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia Ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen, Sarah Alpert and family in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa Ben Hillel. A week of learning by Sherry and Moshe Gross in memory of her mother, Miriam Bas Meir. Barbara Gallandauer in memory of her husband, Avram Ben Yonatan. Harriet Goldman in memory of her husband, Hillel Ben Gershon. David Sabkir, Judy Sabkir Gannon, and Jonathan Sabkir in memory of their father, Aaron Simcha Ben Chaim Sadok. Today being the 6th of February, we do not have any individual days of more learning. And the Shamas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shamat Leah, and the Chol B'nai Israel, good Gaben Shtiach. All right. Okay. Right, so ideally, today's stuff is your Dalit, but I just want to drop back a little bit beforehand. Okay? Okay, Rabba had asked a question on the Gemara on the bottom of the previous Amud. Okay, and we got into the discussion yesterday as to situations where one had committed to two different periods of Nazirut, and whether they were one following the other, or whether one interrupted the other, things like that. Okay, and the Gemara therefore then tried to give us an example where it's possible that we might say that based on how the person phrased the expression, that would indicate what the pattern, so to speak, would be. Okay? And at the very bottom of the Amud, it was short, but it raised an interesting question. Okay? Which was, why are we talking about an example of a person saying, okay, that they take it on, okay, 20 days from now, and then, okay,
100 days.
well, we'll get to that in a second. Why say 20 days from now, I'm taking on one period, but now I'm taking on this much longer period, okay, the 100 days, okay, and how does that fit one to another, okay? Okay. Right, because part of the implication seems to be, we raised a side question, okay, namely that if you were going to say that that you could start one period and then, so to speak, put part of that term on hold, then go to a second term, okay, and then finish up the earlier term. Okay, one of the side questions we asked, at what point does the individual then deal with their haircut and deal with their offerings? Okay, particularly if we take the example of, let's say somebody had taken the first a 30-day period, and at the end of 20 days, okay, that's when, let's say our example was that another term of Nazirut went into effect, whether it was the example we said of a vow, like the 100, or whether it was in the example of a child was born, and if he had said, if it's a child, I'm going to I'll do Nazirut, okay? And then all you'd have is that 10 days left over, okay, to finish the first term. But the problem is 10 days is certainly not enough hair growth, okay, to really adequate say that that's a real, I'm going to use the word in quotes, completion of a term of Nazirut. And so therefore, what you would really need to say is that maybe we need to add time to that 10 days, okay? Does that mean that we say that first 20 days is garnished, is not valid whatsoever? Or might we say, no, we simply add 20 days so that then he'll have the adequate amount of hair growth to satisfy what is a minimum term of Nazirut, the 30 days, and then be able to get one haircut.
Why is the hair growth so important?
Why does it drive in that?
Okay, one question at a time. Okay, why is the hair growth so important? Because there's a clear statement in the Torah that that's part of Nazirut. Okay, and if you do, and we balance that as the Gemara, as in fact, Art Scroll points it out, that there's another pasuk in the Torah that says you shouldn't not cut the corners of your hair.
That's not my question. You mentioned that 20 days is not enough of a hair growth. Why is so?
No, I said 10 days is not considered enough of a hair growth.
So why is it so? Why is the amount of hair growth so?
Because it has to fulfill, if it's connected with Nazirut, and Nazirut is 30 days, that's not sufficient. Okay,
So it's basically 30 days. It's not so much that the hair has to grow a certain amount. It's 30 days.
the hair has to fulfill the requirement
30
of 30-day Nazirut period of growth. Eric, your question. Okay. All right, so that's where that was a quick try attempt at overview. So the Gemara then finished up on the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, right? But Nazirut Mu'etet. So why doesn't he ask about a situation of a lesser period, right? Of 100 days. Why did he bring 100 days? Why, right? Shorten the period. Okay. So the Gemara then says, Chada migo chada, kame ba'ele. So one is maybe based on the other. Okay, and maybe we should ask in regards to that. So the top of Yud Daled now continues. Okay, and what do we get? Im timtzeh lomar, if you want to say Nazirut mu'etet, that we're talking about a smaller period, namely the minimum term of 30 days, right? Kevan da asara yamin hu the yitrin. Why? Because maybe then we would wind up with only 10 days left over. Okay, which we just said was the problem because of it's not a full term. Hair isn't long enough to fulfill the requirement. And so therefore, lo salik le halin asara. Okay, that we might not consider these to be an official, right, time of Nazirut. Okay, and should they then even count those initial 20 days? Okay, that had been of a 30-day term that had been interrupted. Okay, Vadai Nazir Meyayom. So therefore, we understand clearly that if at least by giving the suggestion of 100 days, okay, and there had been an interruption, okay, there would have been enough time, okay, to go back and finish the first term that would have been adequate to cover an adequate period of Nazirut and to get hair and term of length of days, right? Okay. Kevan de itle tamnin yomi says levaso, since there then would have been 80 days, okay, that certainly would have been enough both to cover a minimum Nazirut term of 30. In fact, more than that, but certainly enough for hair growth as well. All right, so that's the point that we're saying. And at that point, then he would have been able to go and get the haircut in the offerings. Okay, so, right, Salkin lay, Olo, do we deduct it? Do we not count it or not? The imtum selomar chayle. Right, so do they count? So v'im timtzeh lomar chayle, and if you want to say, okay, that's the case, that they do days cut, that's done. Okay, that when the person made his 2 vows, and he indicated, remember in the statement, me'achshav, okay, and very clearly that would be the start of that 100-day period. Okay, Amar Hareini Nazir Lachar Esrim Yom. But he also said at the same time a second commitment of Nazir vow of a 20-day period. Okay, that he wouldn't start that till 20 days later. Okay, Umeachshav Nazir Olam. Okay, and maybe therefore we're going to say at that point, okay, that what's going to happen? What about the stat if he hadn't said now from 100 days, but he had made a different expression. Namely, he said, at this point, I will commit to be a Nazir Olam. And remember, we've talked about the fact that there are different varieties, I'll say, of Nazirut. Okay, and that one of the aspects of Nazir Olam permitted him after 30 days to,
Maybe it's
okay,
after a year.
okay, to shave. Okay, how does that fit in? By the way, there's also a Girsa problem here because others have the phrase Nazir Le'olam instead of Nazir Olam. So that would again also change the situation.
What's the difference between that? Leolam and Olam.
Okay, and one would be able to say that Nazir Olam, okay, is one status, and therefore, what's the implication?
You have to wait a year.
You'd have to wait a certain period of time and then able to get ahead. And Michael is going to, in 1 second. Okay, the other, in other words, after a certain time, cut hair, continue cutting, right? The other was not the case. No cut, no cut. Yeah, you wanted to add.
The issue is, if it's Nazir La'olam, that means you're an ongoing series of 30-day Nazirs.
Right, 30
So that's
cut,
not
30
Olam.
cut, 30 cut,
But if you say Nazir Olam,
straight.
you're not allowed to get a haircut until the outside of the statement. So how can he end the intermediate?
So there's a problem with both the initial term and the between term.
Naziris that starts in 20 days and ends in 50 days. He's not early, it's too soon to get his first haircut for the long-term Naziris, the
Right.
permanent Naziris. So now you have an impossible situation. So how do we resolve it?
Right.
That's
So
the question.
The issue is you've got different scenarios, and we still come back to the problem of at what point does the person get their haircut, bring their offerings. Okay, because remember, at least my thinking was, if you've made two commitments, are you expecting the individual to do two separate situations?
That's the-
Okay, or is there just one? That's the point. Okay. Okay. V'imtim selomar chayle, and if again we're going to say that it does take effect. Amar hareini nazir lachar shloshim esrim yom. Okay, shav nazir mahu. What's the situation? Michayle ale olo. Does it take effect or not? Okay. So the Gemara says, imtim selomar hacha. Okay, if you want to say kevan de efshar le'it shule, since it's possible for him to petition a sage, okay, and have that,
Cancel the
okay, remove the Nazir vow by petitioning the sage, we might argue then that it should take effect immediately because he has that option. Amar hareini Nazir Shimshon. What about another situation? Let's say he makes one commitment, okay, of I'm going to say for the moment, a regular term of Nazirut at some point, but he also declares a second statement, which is a brand new example of Nazirut, that I'm a Shimshon Nazir, okay? That situation.
Never get a haircut
Okay.
and you can't cancel.
Okay, so what happens? La'achar esrim yom. That he said, I'll be that kind of Nazir after 20 days. And again, that's another unique status of Nazir, okay? Right? Because we saw the only exceptions to that was in regards to being Matame, okay? But otherwise, no haircut, okay, no, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all right? Umeachshav Nazir stam. And then he says, also in that situation, and now I'll be a stam, a regular Nazir, so to speak. Mahu, what's the situation then? Hacha, here in this case, lo efshar le'itshulei. It's not possible for him then to petition a sage to have that Nazir, okay, situation removed, right? Because the petitioning of a sage for a Nazir Shimshon doesn't work. It doesn't apply, okay? Michaile Olo, does it apply then or not, right?
That's the normal Naziris.
Right,
Since
so
you
the-
know you can never end it, maybe it doesn't. even-
right. So with the Samson example, okay, that's in essence a Nazir forever, okay? And so therefore the question then, does the standard take effect or not? Okay, that's again part of the problem, okay? Amar, or let's say another example of what he says, okay? Amar kim Moshe b'shiva ba'adan. Or let's say he says in one case that he would be like Moshe Rabbeinu on the 7th of Adar, okay? In terms of that status, all right? Right, Mai, what's the situation? Pashut minahu kadmaita. Okay, so maybe, says the Gemara now, after asking all of these, setting up all these different kinds of situations where you have, okay, different terms of 3 or 4 examples of different terms of, I don't want to say conflicting, but I will certainly say challenging, okay, determinations of Nazirut. Okay, what's the situation? The Gemara answers, Shot minayu kadmaita. At least answer one of the questions. Answer the first question, right? And we go on here. Hareini Nazir la'achar esrim yom. Coming back to our earliest example. He says that he takes on the expression of Nazareth for 20 days. And then, what? Okay, in 20 days, implying that it is a regular term. Okay, right? Umeachshav me'ayom. And now, okay, 100 days. Okay. So what happens, right? Says our text, Moneh Esrim, one counts the 20 days. V'achar kach moneh shloshim. Okay, and then after counts the, all right, so the one that he took on, achshav, you take of the 100, you count the first 20. Yeah, hold on a sec.
Okay, sure.
Okay, count the first 20 out of the 100. Okay, then you count the regular term of the 30. Umoneh shloshim. V'achar kach, okay, wait, I don't want to say count 50. Okay, I said we count 20 out of the first term. Then the Gemara says, then he counts the 30 from the second term. Okay, ve'achar kach moneh shmonim. Then he counts 80 to finish up the first term where he had counted 20.
It can't be coexistent.
Even though he counted the 30,
Okay.
We needed 30.
Okay,
You can't count days for both.
that's
because you can't
number one.
Resolve the 100 until 100 days is up.
Okay,
But to
more
resolve
than
the
that.
30, you have to
More than
get a
that.
haircut
He
and-
made he made 2 vows.
Yeah.
One vow was for Nazir in 20 days. Okay,
No,
After
no,
20 days.
that's what-
after 20 days. So that we're saying is a regular term, 30 days. But he also made a second vow. The second vow was 100 days, starting now. Okay,
20 counts.
okay, so it would appear that the answer is, the first 20 counted towards the initial term of 100. Then he starts the second term, which is 30. Then he goes back to finish the initial term, the other 80 to finish the total of 100. And at that point, Okay, since you can't do both at the same time, since there were two vows, okay, at that point, that's when he would do his hair and.
No, he does it at 32.
Well, we'll see in a
He does
second.
it also
We'll
at
see,
32.
we'll see in a second. We'll see in a second,
No, but
okay?
Person says, I want to take on two concurrent.
Because that's what's happening here. But there's
No way,
Can't do that.
no way.
No,
Okay.
So therefore, neither one is valid?
No, one is chal, okay? So what happens?
Can an individual extend it?
Oh, let's finish the Gemara and then we'll deal with the questions. Okay. V'achar kach moneh shmoni. Okay, notice what the Gemara says. Kedei lahashlim nezirot rishona. Okay, and that then finishes that 100-day term, which was the first term. Okay? So did that tell us about when he could do the tiglachet, the haircut, and the offerings after the 30 term?
The implication is you do.
Okay,
Because you have to terminate the 30 term.
okay,
In other words, if, for example, it was Yom Tov, I mean, there was some reason why he couldn't terminate the 30. He has to terminate the 30, which means bring the karbanas and then get the haircut before he can resume his new count.
okay. Now,
I'm saying that if I am saying that I'm gonna be a Nazarite for 30 days. And after 10 days, I say, you know something? I don't think I had the right Havana, the mentality these last 10 days. I want to extend it to be 30 days from this point.
Now that you can't get modified.
You can't modify. it.
well,
No,
that's a
what you
different
said
issue.
earlier was if I
Right.
finish my
No, I
Naziris
said
and I
no,
roll
I
over.
meant the other
you know,
So in
Right,
other words,
you
you
can't.
take a haircut and bring the.
You bring the
Carbon
Carbon
second.
Okay, so the okay, so the
Count towards the 80.
No.
okay, wait, listen,
So
let's listen, guys,
Why we let
Listen,
the bag of chicken give the
listen,
shit already? It's
okay?
ridiculous.
So what happens?
We're rushed.
Okay, he had the 20, he's got a 30, and he's got another 80. So the question we asked is what happens at the end of that 30 period? Okay, all right, now, the Gemara is going to have to come back and answer that question in some way, because here it doesn't spell it out. Okay, what we could assume, but we have to go on with the Gemara. We have to assume, how can he continue the other 80 if he really didn't finish the 30 term properly? Okay, so he must have to do something at the end of the 30 term to then be able to go back and do the 80 to finish the initial term.
My question is on the 51st day.
Wait,
Does that count?
Wait.
as the 80?
wait,
Okay.
okay? All right, let's see what the Gemara tells us, okay? All right? Okay, so what happens? Okay, the Gemara now jumps to another topic, okay? But in doing so, it ultimately will try to give us some sense of an answer to the question we asked about the 20, 30, 80, and what happens at the end of the 30. Okay, because the text doesn't say here. Yeah, all right. So we'll have to try to derive from what the Gemara discusses an answer to that situation. Okay, Nitma b'yamei b'no. If he became tamei during the time that of his a term that he took on when he said when the son is born. Okay, which was a 30-day term. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter. According to Rabbi Yochanan, his answer is right. It forfeits. Okay, the Gamri. All right, both the son's term and his own term. So the 20-day and the 30-day are all for fallen. Okay, That's what Rabbi Yochanan's view is. Okay? So in other words, he would not bring anything at the end of that 30-day period, according to Rabbi Yochanan, because the whole 50 days don't apply.
Depends when it became.
Okay? All right, we'll see that in a second. Okay, but the point is, so that's one view. Reish Lakish Omer, says Reish Lakish, different answer. Eino soter. Okay, that it doesn't forfeit it. Right?
The 20 days are not lost.
Okay, so that we're going to see what happens. Okay, maybe if he became Tameh during that 30-day period, Reish Lakish is going to argue that's the only term that becomes forfeit. Okay, but the earlier 20 days, okay, which were for the earlier term, that can still apply. Okay, let's go on. All right. What's the rationale? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Soter. Rabbi Yochanan, when he said it was forfeit, right? Chada Naziruta Arichtahi, because he says it's one long period of Nazirut, the 20 and the 30. Okay, so that's why he argues it's all totally forfeited. Okay, Reish Lakish Shema Eino Soter. Reish Lakish says it was not forfeited, at least the first 20. Why? Nizirut didei lechud v'dibrei lechud, because the Nizirut that he took on himself, okay, as the first expression, okay, which was in our original case, the 100, that was his. The other Nizirut, the 30-day period, was in regards to the birth of the child or the son. Okay, is separate. Okay, let's go on. All right. Now, since we've raised that question, we go on to another question. Okay. Nitma b'mei tzara'ata. Okay. Now we have to assume we're talking about a Nazir here who becomes Tameh through with contact to a tzara'as corpse. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Living Surah.
Oh, so he's
He himself.
doubly
is-
impure.
Has Surah, or he does
Okay.
contact.
Shot I had was he comes.
Then he's Tomei Mace, and it's not an issue. He's
Okay.
terminate because
I'm
he
just
has
telling
ASAP.
you what the shot I had. Okay.
So that's
Right.
incorrect, Chuck.
Well, I'll go back and look. Let's look at, we'll go back afterwards and look. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan says what? Soter, again, he forfeits.
Everything.
Okay? Again, still applies everything. Okay? Reish Lakish Shema Eino Soter. Reish Lakish says no, he doesn't forfeit. All right? Rabbi Yochanan says, why Soter? Dahab Nizirut Kain. Why? Because he was in a status of Nizirut. Reish Lakish Amar Eino Soter. Reish Lakish says it doesn't forfeit. Why? Sarat Lechud or Nizirut Lechud. That his Saras was separate and his Nizirut was separate. Okay? All right. I'm going to just make a note because I thought I copied it right from art school. Okay. All right. So what happens? All right. Now, and right. So utsricha. So now the Gemara asks, why do we need both cases? Okay. Why did we have to present both? All right. The itmar bahach kamait. Because had we only talked about the first example, okay? Bahayama Rabbi Yochanan Soter. Maybe in that particular case, Rabbi Yochanan would say that it's forfeited, right? Shem Nizirut Echati. Because what? Again, similar to what he said before, Nizirut was in both situations, and therefore arguing it was one long Nizirut. Aval Baha, in the second case of Tzara'at and Nazirut, Ema Modele Reish Lakish, I might say that he would acknowledge the view of Reish Lakish. The Nazir Lechudu Tzara'at Lechud, that Nazirutship is one status and Tzara'at is another status. Ve'iyat Mar Baha, and if I was saying in the second case, namely dealing with Tzara'as and Nazirut, Bahaka Amar Reish Lakish, okay, in this case, Reish Lakish would say that it doesn't forfeit. Aval Bahach, but in the earlier case of Nazirut, Ema Modelela Rabbi Yochanan, I might say that maybe in that case, he might have acknowledged the view of Rabbi Yochanan. Tzricha, and therefore we needed both cases. Okay. Now, have we really answered our initial situation? Okay. In a sense, we would have a machloket there. Okay, between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, what to do at the end of that 30-day period. Okay, so we really don't have a.
That's not a machloket.
Okay.
It's only whether you terminate it.
Okay, well, yes, but that has an impact. Okay, Nitma biyom gidul se'ah. Now we get to a new situation. Since we were talking about becoming Tameh, we'll bring up another possibility. What, okay, the situation we need to understand is, let's assume the person has finished their term of Nazirut.
This is
Okay.
the short Nazir
Okay.
stuck in the middle.
Okay, it may be,
The 30-day.
it may be, but it could apply to any Nazirus. Okay, okay, it could apply to the 30-day middle one, but it could apply to any 30-day period. Okay, and ideally then on day 31, what do we expect the person to do? Get his hair cut and bring his offering. Okay, ideally, usually the practice was you do the offerings in the morning and then you go and you get your hair. Okay, what happens if he didn't do it then? Okay, so that's what Yom Gidul Se'ar is referring to. Okay, that 31st day. Okay, Rav Amar Eino Soter. Rav says it doesn't forfeit. Afilu Rabbi Yochanan da Amar Soter. Even according to Rabbi Yochanan, who said in our other case that, right, that it does forfeit. Hani mili hechadekai b'nizirut. Gidul se'ar mishlim nizirutu. Why? Because we say that the growing of the hair and then the ultimate haircut is part of the process of completing one's nizirut. Okay? Ushmuel Amar Soter, disagreeing with Rav, and says, no, it does forfeit. Afilu l'Reish Lakish, da Amar ein Soter. Even according to Reish Lakish, in our other example, that said that there is no forfeiture. Why? Hatam shtei nizirut. Because there we're talking about two terms of nizirut. Hacha chada niziruta. Because here we're dealing with one term of nizirut. Okay? Amar Rav Chisda.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Is Tuma the only reason for forfeiture? If someone, for example, drinks wine inadvertently during this, is that forfeiture?
I would see that elsewhere the Gemara is going to tell us that somebody who breaks one of the Isurim
Right.
of Nazirut is not considered forfeiture, but is to be punished with Malchus. Okay?
Just a little bit different. The case here is for some reason, we don't know why, maybe it's on day 29, for example, for some reason, the guy has his head shaved. than his body shave. Okay, maybe people grabbed him and shaved him, who knows what. When day 30 comes, he does not have a 30-day growth. Obviously, he only has 1 day of growth. So he brings his korbanos because his 30
Right.
days is up. But now he has to wait 29 more days to complete his Naziris with the body shave, because you can't body shave before 30 days. So the machlokes here is how we handle those 29 days. Are they considered an extension of his
Nazirus or
Nazirus
not?
because he hasn't finished up his ending? Or are they considered growth days, Gadol Sayar, and they are not technically part of the Nazirus, because, but he hasn't yet ended the Nazirus by the year. So based on whether you consider them extension days or extra days, the halacha changes, and that's
see.
what's going on here.
We'll see.
In other words, you're asking if the 29 days counts towards the 80?
No,
No,
forget the
nothing.
80. The
Put
80
that
is
aside.
part of the
That's a
29.
separate issue.
Are they literally, did the 30-day Naziris become longer? Or are these just extra days?
Let's phrase it another way. Because the question is the following. You have 2 acts that have to be done to complete the Nazirut, right? What happens if he's not, for some reason, okay, doesn't do both? Right? Is the Nazirut really considered finished, completed? Okay? There could be a situation where, that he had the animals, he brought the animals readily, but for some reason he didn't get the haircut that day. Okay? So in other language, we would say, is the tiglachet ma'akevet or not? Okay? That would be a way of asking that question according to the Gemara. Okay? So let's see what happens. Amar Rav Chisda. Okay? So Rav Chisda is going to tell us the following. Hakol, he says. Right? In Rav Chisda's view, all the sacrifices and the shaving, both acts are needed. Modim, everybody agrees that both acts are needed. She'im kadesh se'ar badam, aim lo takana. Okay, that's his point. Okay,
If he becomes Tomei.
all right. So that's the issue. All right. So what happens? Ali badamam. Okay. So what happens if yet? All right. In other words, his hair. It could be that he became tamei in between.
That's the only one.
Okay. So what happens? According to whom? Eli b'da Rabbi Eliezer. If it's according to the view of Rabbi Eliezer, kevan da amar tiglachat ma'akevet. That's why I phrased the question that way. If you, according to Rabbi Eliezer, who says that the lack of a haircut inhibits the completion of his nizirut, phrasing it that way, okay? Toch mleati v'listor. Do we say then that nizirut actually continues and therefore it becomes forfeited? Okay. Ela aliba de rabbanan. Or maybe we say it's based on the view of the rabbis. Ha'amrei tiglachet lo ma'akef, where they argue that the haircut does not inhibit the completion of the Nazirut. Okay? Le'olam aliba de rabbanan. No, we're going to say that we focus it and agree that it is the view of the rabbis. Okay? That the lack of the haircut, okay, does not inhibit the completion of the Nazirut. Umay ein lo takana. If that's the case, why did Rav Chisda say that he has no remedy under that situation? Right? Ein lo takana the mitzvat giluach. Is that what we're saying? That he has no remedy to fulfill the mitzvah of getting the hair cut as part of the completion of the Nazirut process.
What if he's bald?
You shave every day.
Here today, gone tomorrow.
Okay,
Not the rest of the
complete,
body.
complete.
Shave everything from head to toe.
Okay. Right, now what happens? All right, let's go on. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Nazir shekalu lo yamam. Okay. Okay, here we ask the question, and that's why I said, let's go on in the Gemara, because it may answer it. Says Rabbi Yossi in the name of Rabbi Chanina, a Nazirite that completes his days, okay, loke al hatuma. If he becomes tameh, what is the result? He gets malchus. Ve'eno loke al hatiglachat velo al hayayin. But he would not get malchus were it such that his hair got shorn or cut during the time, or that he drank wine. Ma'ishna tum'ah delake. So the Gemara asks, so what is so unique about the Nazir becoming tameh that he should get malchus then, as opposed to not getting malchus regarding other being over on other prohibitions? Okay, in this situation, the amakra. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Kol yemei haziro Hashem." All the days of his Nazirite towards Hashem, lerabot yamim shela'achar mila'ot, and that includes days after number 30, right? Ki yamim shelifnei mila'ot, because they are considered like the days before number 30. Okay? Ihachi, if that's the case, says the Gemara, atiglachet nami lechayim, then we should have assumed that if he got a haircut, okay, before then, okay, before then, he also should get malchus. Why then did we just say that they don't? Daha amar rachmana. Why? Because the Torah says, Kol yamei neder nizro ta'ar lo ya'avor al rosho. All the days of his Nazirut, a shaver, a razor should not come upon his head, or for that matter, the rest of his body. Okay? La'asot yamim shela'achar mila'ot ki yamim shelifnei mila'ot. And that therefore we should make the days after the completion, 31, etc., like the days before day 30. V'tu, and furthermore, we've got another pasuk. Kol yemei nizro mikol asher ya'aseh migefen hayayin. Again, we have the phrase kol yemei. Okay, both terms. All right, and the reference to wine. So if that's the case, if that's the pasuk, why don't we argue there too that by drinking wine he should get malchus? Okay, in the situation, right? La'asot yamim shela'achar mila'ot ki yamim shelifnei mila'ot. To make the days again after day 30, like the days before day 30. And we'll just go over a tiny bit. Shani hach. It's different here. Why? The amar rachmana. Why? Because the Torah clearly spells out v'timei rosh nidzro, that where it becomes tameh regarding the head of his Nazirite. Mi shenizro talui lo birosho. Okay, And therefore, his Nazarethship is dependent, okay, on what, Eshi? The hair growth, the 30-day term, having enough hair.
So you're saying.
Oh, wait, let's finish. Okay, what happens though? He challenges, that gets challenged. Meitive, shekalu, right? What about Nazir shekalu lo yamav? The challenge, what about the fact that he finished his days? Asur legalech l'shtot yayin l'tamei meitim. That would seem to imply that even on day 31, whatever, after that, he would be prohibited to haircut, to drink wine, become tamei. Ve'im gilach v'shatayim. Till he continues with the process of finishing. Okay, all right. Ve'im gilach v'shatayayin v'nitma l'meitim. Harei zeh sofeget ha'arba'im. Okay, and as a result, therefore, he would suffer malchus. Okay, for any tiyuvta. This then becomes a proof text against Rabbi Yossi's
So in
statement.
other words, if he doesn't do the process.
He's not completed. He's right.
Still said no.
You have to end, which is.
That's
what-
why I said, when I said hakol, that I said the implication was both aspects of the process as well as everybody.
That's why we asked the question, if it becomes a.
Archibald did say to get Cyrus,
It's not allowed to-
Cyrus before he got to him.
How he can't end.
It does say that he gets us before contact with it,
At 30 days.
so I don't know where.
Because.
There's
So
a
do
sentence.
we say, since we know it can't end, we don't let it.
Can feel good.
The whole Nazir, it's a voluntary thing.
Right.
Nobody told him to be a Nazir.
Right,
So then why